Hello everyone, I'm Sunny D and welcome back to another episode of the Appalachian Expose. Our own Shane Douglas recently sat down with George South to discuss the evolution of the professional wrestling business.
Hey, this is the franchise Shane Douglas. Come down to one of my favorite parts of the country where I started my career right here in North Carolina. And I got one of the guys that's been around actually longer than me. But George South, man, it's great to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll do this.
Well, see, I didn't know. Can we touch?
Yeah, can we do
now,
the elbows?
Yeah, man. I didn't know if we can get close or not. But thank you, man. I love you, Shane, and so glad to be here, sit here with you, and just talk about how good it used to be. And people say you're some old grouchy old timer. I said no. I said, but y'all changed it. We didn't.
Yes.
I went to see an old group one time, Mother's Finest. That was hot back in the day. And the original group still together, and man, this place was packed, and the lead singer come out, and this lady, a big lady, and loud, and first thing she said, y'all changed, we didn't. That's how we'll start this thing, y'all changed, we ain't changed.
I'll go with it, you guys have all changed.
Yeah. So.
I see they brought the banner here. I love all the old NWA Jim Crockett promotion stuff. It takes me back, that's when I first met you.
Right, sure was.
10th and Techwood, right?
Yeah, sure was.
The old 10th and Techwood studio. Got there as a young kid. Had been in the business at 30 seconds through UWF.
Right.
They brought me over, and the first night they said we're working with George South. Well, I'd seen you on television, had never met you, and you could tell the rest of the story.
Oh, I love it. It's one of my every time I see J.J. Dillon, he turns around and leaves, because he knows I'm going to tell him the story. But and of course I knew who you were, but I never had a chance to meet you that day. And JJ come over to me, and what a lot of fans don't understand is they got to fit everything in that time. What if you're running late or a little early? And JJ come over and said, George, we need you again. And I said, yeah, anything you need. And he said, well, we got this great kid coming in. He said, well, we're really, really going to do some stuff with him. He said, and you're going to work with him today. I said, man, great. And he said, but there's one thing. He said, you only got like 6 seconds. I said, what? He said, oh yeah, and that's from like curtain to curtain, 6 seconds. And he said, I won't put no pressure on you, but that's it, 6 seconds. And we did it. We went out and it was quick, but he sure did. And man, you have to tell me that, but he sure did. So
we think it's all been like that.
Oh my gosh! So I tell everybody, I said, man, they gave me that ball, but I only had 6 seconds to do something with it. But we did it, and history is made, and of course we've done it a lot. I was just telling somebody the other day, one of my other favorite stories with you, and it was maybe, what was it, last year, 2 years ago, we were working a match, and first time it's ever happened in my career is I had a good little house there. It was a Chair City Clash right outside of Lexington, and Shane, remember the big guy sitting ringside?
Yes. Yes.
His blood sugar had got low.
Yes.
And before we even locked up, boom, right on his face. Hit the floor. But I laugh now. Of course, the guys. I'll finish that. I got to meet him after that, and he's doing great. Lost a lot of weight. His health's better. But I'll never forget, and I still laugh. Is everybody's worried? Just everything stopped, and we're still in the ring. And I'll never forget. That goofy ring announcer was still in the ring. He had not even really introduced us, and he said, he told us, he said, the promoter wants y'all to go to the back and turn around and come back. And he looked at, we ain't leaving this ring. We ain't going to the back and have to walk back. So for like 20 minutes, we just told jokes on each other, just mic'd it back and forth, and while the paramedics are over here, and this guy, bless his heart, he was so big, they couldn't get remember they went and got Barbarian to come and try to lift him. They couldn't get the stretcher under him to get him out of there.
It was scary. You see.
But in the middle of the dark, we didn't know if he'd died. And that announcer, he's trying to be, nonchalant. He says, guys, the promoter said, y'all need to go in the back and turn around and come back out here. You think we're going to leave this way? We ain't coming back out here. But this is probably 2 years later. Some show, a guy and his wife came up, and he says, you don't remember me? And man, he had lost. It was unbelievable. I didn't remember. He said, I'm the one that took that big face bump when you were wrestling Shane Douglas, and he had lost weight and got his blood sugar, right, and he was eating a lot healthy and stuff, because we never got, they finally got him on that stretcher that night and took him out, and we never heard, what had happened, but we just said, ring the bell, get him out of here, ring the bell. Then we just
You remember, Georgie, during our back and forth, I dropped out of the ring to go around and check. I was genuinely, we both were genuinely concerned for the guy. And he was out.
Yeah.
I mean, he was out completely, like unconscious and laboring to breathe. And I'm really happy to hear that. You know,
I hugged his neck, and of course his wife was so happy. They got him eating right, got his blood sugar down, and he had lost a tremendous amount of weight. And so, but he said, "Yeah, I'll always be connected to you and Shane Douglas." I'm like, "Yeah, you just broke your nose when you hit that floor, buddy." But yeah,
scary stuff.
Crazy time.
When we were kids and going to 10th and Techwood every week, did you have any inkling in the back of your head then that that would even be a memory in your future, and to look back at it? I think there's so many kids that would love it in the business today, and since us, that would say, "Well, I'd love to be able to go back to that 10th and Techwood," because the history that was made there.
It sure was.
605 Superstation every Saturday night, and to have been part of it. I was telling these guys at the car on the way down. The dressing room literally was a curtain.
It sure was.
Just this corner, right?
Yeah,
just a little,
it sure was.
1 or 2 chairs and nothing but bags on the floor.
That's exactly right. And you know what? A lot of fans don't realize is, and it may be that way now, but they had to keep those studios so freezing, because the cameras would overheat.
Right.
So sometimes we would tape at 9 a.m. in the morning, and you're already freezing because there's no heat in that studio.
Yeah.
And you got to go out there and work. And I remember, like with Michael Hayes, that first chop would be like, "I'm done," in that cold studio. But see, like when I first broke in, and it was so neat, Shane, because I had just started trying to wrestle a little bit, and so all you could do is look in the back of a magazine and see that every now and then they put an address to a promotion. There was no phones, there was no, you didn't text nobody or emails nobody. You just tried to send them pictures, and I never got an answer. I even found the phone number to Georgia Championship Wrestling one time. Wow. So I called down there, and Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer answered. I swear it's a true story. And he said, he didn't even let me talk. He said, "If you come down here, I'll kill you." Okay. I mean, man, I'm gonna go sell cars or cut grass or something. I mean, he didn't even ask me my name. He said, "If you come down here, I'm gonna kill you." I'm never gonna fulfill my dream. So I said, I ain't giving up. So I started just trying to get in the business. And an old timer named Rusty Roberts, who still lives in Tennessee, he had done some work for Crockett, but he had started training me a little bit in his backyard and stuff like that. And then long story short, I hear about Mike Jackson, and I was living in Charlotte, and Mike just needed some guys. And so I had done tried everything. Shane, I literally mailed pictures out, never got. That's why I tell these young kids, nobody owes you nothing. Nobody ever answered my picture. Nobody ever. I sent them and kept sending them.
Sure.
And I remember I'd cut grass. I'd do anything I could to pay for the postage to mail an 8x10. The closest I ever got is I finally ran into Dutch Mantell one time, and he said, "George South," he said, "I think I got a stack of your pictures on." And I'm thinking, well, he never answered me. He never answered me or nothing. So I got in touch with Mike Jackson. He said, "I need some guys," and I'm thinking, okay, is it that easy? And he did, literally. That's right place, right time. So he said, "But it's going to be in Atlanta, Georgia." I didn't care. I just wanted.
Sure.
Oh my gosh! And so I ended up landed at Old Techwood Drive, as we're talking about, and scared to death. All of a sudden, I'm seeing like Billy Jack Haynes and Rip Oliver. I mean, all these guys I've seen in magazines, and I'm a nervous wreck. And so the true story. And this was how good it was, Shane, is it was Georgia Championship Wrestling, but guys came in from everywhere. There was nobody hating nobody. There'd be guys from Memphis and Florida, and so I wrestled Jerry Lawler, the first on ever on TV. And I was so excited, and I'll never forget this, Shane. I knew his finish. I mean, I knew he beat everybody with the fist drop and all that, but he had told me, "I'm going to change it up, and so I'm going to beat you with the pile driver." I said, "Okay." And that's all he said. So we get it there and have a little match. Well, he had forgot. So he gets up, pulls the strap down, comes off the second rope with that, 1, 2, and I kick out. Oh my God. Nobody. And I thought, wow. And I'm waiting on the pile driver. I didn't know much, but I knew what a pile driver was. And so it was awful. So he may have rolled me up or something. So I'll never forget this. I was like 18. I get through that curtain, and Ole Anderson, where the heck did he come from? He literally grabbed me. You couldn't do it now because somebody sued you. But he literally grabbed me by my, I didn't have a shirt on. He grabbed me by like my shoulder bone and lifted me straight up off the ground. and for the next 20 minutes cussed me out.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He said Lawler has beat Hogan, he's beat Andre with the fist drop, and you piece of crap, you kicked out. And I thought, my career is, I don't have a career and it's over, but Lawler stepped in and said, Ole, calm down. He said, that was my fault. I did tell the kid to apologize. Of course, Ole just dropped me then, poof, didn't apologize or nothing like that. So I just really just worked my butt off. And then, see, I was there, Shane. This is how crazy our business is. Ole was in charge of everything. Well, one day, we're in that little dressing room, and Ole says, I'll be right back. And just like it was yesterday, he walks out and the doors are swinging, and all of a sudden, Jim Crockett walks in. Who? What the heck's Jim Crockett doing at Georgia? Because that was all Jim Barnett and all them. All of a sudden, Jim Crockett walked in, and I could hear Tommy Rich and Buzz Sawyer in the back going, and they knew that their job is probably, and to show you how cold our business is, Jim Crockett comes in and says, I'm Mr. Jim Crockett. I'm fixing to purchase all of this.
I appreciate it.
And I'm sitting there shaking. I didn't know who the guy, I remembered him.
Yeah.
He said, but I want to introduce you the second in command. And here comes Dusty Rhodes. Just like that. And Ox Baker's here. Mike Davis and Tommy Lane, bless their heart, they had just left Crockett to get a push as the RPMs. But here's Crockett. And just like this, no warning. They don't care if you bought a house. Dusty pulls out a folded sheet of notebook paper, Shane. He said, here's my starting lineup. If your name's on here, you got a job. If it ain't, pack up. And he starts literally reading the names. He doesn't care who signed, who's making money, who's on top. And he literally, he's just calling the names out.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget this. Chick Donovan, who I love, was there. Well, Chick's name wasn't on either list. And I remember Chick walked up to Dusty and he said, well, Dusty, my name is not, you didn't you didn't say nothing. And he looked right at Chick Donovan and he said, I got my own Nature Boy. And I watched the poor Chick turn around, went and got his bags, packed up, Ox Baker, all of that crew packed up and left. And I thought, man, things are fixing to change. And it was so funny because I was so unimportant. I remember always said, don't worry, kid. You're safe just because you ain't nobody, So you ain't got to worry about it.
I'm curious, what year was this?
This was end of 81, the beginning of 82.
Okay.
And so they didn't even know I was living in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. So of course that's when I first met JJ.
Yeah.
And then it was funny because it wasn't a complete change, it was gradually. You started seeing, like we had the long riders with Scott Irwin and, and his brother, Bill Irwin.
Scott,
And so, and Kareem Muhammad. And so it was funny because they slowly started bringing a lot of the Crockett guys in. And all of a sudden Ron Ritchie and guys like that, they wouldn't be around. All of a sudden, man, they were just here. Bill Howard and guys like that. And it was just slowly bringing them in. And then for about 4 years, I was there every time the doors opened. And I loved it. They were beating the tar. I didn't care.
Yeah.
I was sitting there with my heroes. And it was funny. Rick Rude had just started. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because one morning he shows up. And just, great, just a young kid. And Ole said, that's next week, stupid. Just that, he said, that's next week, stupid. So Rick Rude got hit the wrong weekend. So he just turned around and left. What the heck's going on here? There was no, and so then, of course, for some reason, but here's what I wanted to get at. The reason I told that whole story. I did not get into Mike Jackson's crew because I could wrestle, because anything like that. I paid him a booking fee. Mm-hmm. He told me up front. I said, Mike, you can take everything I'm making. I don't even know what I'm making.
Right.
But I've tried that's why I will always stand up for the booking fees. And I know things have changed. I've heard crap over the years. I can't believe booking fee. But I tried everything, Shane. And Mike Jackson, with one phone call, and I was getting $40. I was making $40 driving from Charlotte to Atlanta, Georgia. And it's funny because cable hadn't even exploded yet. No. Tommy Rich was beginning to be the hottest thing in the world.
Right.
And I was giving Mike Jackson $20 of it. I tried to give him all of it. He said, no, you got gas to get back on.
Yeah.
And so I didn't care. But I remember, to this day, some of the guys like Pez Wally and them always ribbing me real bad about paying the booking fee, you stupid young kid. And I'm thinking, you don't even understand.
Get you.
I've tried everything in the world to get in here, and there was no other way. And then, of course, JJ found out later on that I lived in Charlotte, and he said, "Well, maybe if we got some work up there for you," and I didn't. I was happy, and it was such a mark, Shane, because we would tape in the mornings, and then I would rush to get back home, and just to hear you ain't. When I knew that I probably had made it is when you hear, because Gordon Soley's podium was right here by the ring, and you hear Gordon Soley say your name.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, I don't care if I ever do anything else.
Yes. Yeah.
And he, in one of the first little angles, this shows you how great our business was. Rip Rogers was feuding with Tommy Rich. And Rip's thing was when he would beat you, he'd take out a can of pink spray paint, and he'd spray paint your hair.
Right.
You know, and then they did the big blow off with Tommy Rich. But I remember Rip asked me, could he paint my hair? I said, you dang right you can paint my hair. You kidding me? I ain't going to wash it either, you know? Well, I wore that pink stuff in my head, and I'd go through grocery stores. Man, I was proud of that. And but it drew money. Just a can of 2-cent paint.
Yes. Simple
and then just started keeping my mouth shut and just working hard. And then, of course, JJ, and here's how so neat about my career, Shane. It's always been just being at the right place. I was never supposed to be booked.
Yeah.
I've had 41 years of wrestling, I wasn't supposed to be there. That's a true story. Everybody thinks I had to, my name was never on a booking sheet. But I learned early on, if you just shut up and do what they ask you to do, that they're going to remember it.
Right.
And I remember in JJ's office for Crockett, he used to have a little, just plain old sheet of paper. It'd be like a little notepad.
Yeah.
And one time I asked him, and because I noticed my name was on there, and it'd be in pencil. There's a lot of names erased out of that thing. Man, there wasn't another wrote me.
Eraser.
No, and he said that's the few guys, and there was like 100 guys in the territory. But he said there's only 3 names on that list, and he said that's the only 3 that I can depend on. And so it was just, he said, I know if we need if someone. You know what? It ain't a brain surgeon to figure this out. I just tried to do the opposite of what I've seen everybody else do, because everybody's getting in trouble.
Right.
You know, everybody's doing something stupid, and I knew there had to be a spot open somewhere. So some of my biggest payoffs were just filling in for guys that did something stupid.
Well, with the 10th and Techwood stuff, the Superstation show, we got cable in Pittsburgh around 76, 77. I remember vividly, because the day my dad and my mom were divorced, my dad had gone there, and I was over for the weekend. I never knew my dad liked professional wrestling, and never heard him talk about it. So we get the cable box hooked up, and he's looking on the TV guide, and he said, hey, wrestling's on tonight at midnight. You want to watch it? So I remember, like it was yesterday, my dad laying on the couch, and I sat down, leaning against the couch. Dad laying right there. What I wouldn't give to snap my fingers in the back there.
Yeah.
You know? And the very first segment that came on was the old WWF Saturday Night WOR show. You know, the trumpet.
Right. Yeah.
And the very first segment that came on was Superstar Billy Graham with Grand Wizard behind a cage. He had an upcoming match with Bruno. And up to this point, we had the studio wrestling on Saturday nights on the local Channel 11. But that was all we could get. And now we're seeing the national show. Very different, a lot slicker looking, obviously. And for me, I was a big comic book mark, right? Reading comic books. And now I'm looking at Superstar Billy Graham. It's like a comic book come to life.
Right.
But he had the gift of gab and the look. And to a kid, I always was like a fish on a hook.
Yeah.
I was mesmerized. And at the end, he took a head of cabbage and grated it on that. This is Bruno's head, you know. And but it was probably around 83, 2, 3, 4 in there somewhere, before we started getting the NWA show.
Right.
And I'd always read about Oliver Humperdinck and Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat and Kernoodle, and I'd read about them and seen pictures, could never see a match. And when that finally came on, one thing that, you know, I'm a young green, long preceding my time in the business, but I remember that show looked very similar, the 10th and Techwood, to what the Saturday night show looked in Pittsburgh.
Wow. In
a studio, the one row of people. They used to have people painted on the wall.
Yeah, I love that.
In studio wrestling. And but they had all the big names: Bruno, Haystack Calhoun, Dominic DiNucci, and all these guys. And it was around the time that I started training with Dominic in '82. Came to meet him in '78. We were kids that we were looking in magazines, And there were a big group of us that all loved wrestling. And that's all we talked about at school. And a kid had gotten his picture in the Pro Wrestling Illustrated because he had this really sad looking homemade ring, carpet and vines for ropes and stuff. Well, we were all pretty handy. We decided we're going to make one just to fool around in. So we went to the junkyard and stole a bunch of stuff and put this ring together. It ended up being pretty damn cool. And after about 2 weeks of that, we were bored, like, what are we going to do now? So back then, if you remember, they used to have the Muscular Dystrophy, MDA, Labor Day Telethon.
Right, yeah.
And Jerry Lewis would tell kids, have a backyard carnival, send $5, send $10. And so I decided, let's do a backyard wrestling show. So we were the very first backyard wrestlers. And we put this show on, and we wrote the stories out, much like the kids do today. We wrote the matches out and just practiced them over and over again. And the woman, I'll never forget the woman's name, Angeline Paparella. She was the local chairwoman of the local branch of the MDA. And she called me up because I was the oldest, all my friends were a year younger. So she called me up and she said, there's a wrestler, an Italian wrestler that lives locally that said he may be home, if so, he may come by. So I said, Bruno Sammartino, we all know him. She goes, no, it's not Bruno, and she started fumbling his name, Dominuni. I said, Dominic DiNucci? He was tag champ at the time with Dino Bravo. She says, yeah, Dominic DiNucci. I went, he lives around here? Well, that day, we didn't know if he was going to come or not. That day, we're getting ready to start the show at a big LTD. It was in my friend's dad's business's backyard. This big LTD pulled up in the parking lot of the business next to us. And all I remember was seeing this, like a bear would get out of the car, this huge, gigantic man. And it was Dominic, So you can imagine, like us, we were Big Mark, right?
Right.
And we were like, oh my God, Dominic DiNucci's here. So he actually got so into it, he came out and got involved in one of the matches. And afterwards, we were taking, now this is 4 years before he trains me, 4.5 years. We're taking a group photo out in front of the business after the show's over. And he's asking us how old we are, and he said, a bunch of young punks or something. I said, how old are you? He goes, never ask a fucking wrestler's age. Never ask a wrestler's age, you fucking punk. And he and I became friends after that, probably more so at my urging.
Right.
I was more like a dingleberry, at his house and knocking on the door.
Right.
And when I was a senior in high school, obviously going to college, and he came to me and he said, I'd asked him about training me. Not that I ever thought I could be a wrestler.
Right.
I just wanted to, leaving high school, figure I could stay involved in some kind of athletics. And he just told me this story about 6 months ago. Dominic's still alive, bless his heart, and healthy, funny. He said, we were sitting in his house one day having a glass of wine, and he looked out the window and he said, right down there at the end of the driveway is where your mom and dad came to talk to me. And I went, like, my mom and dad were divorced, right? They got along great, but they were never anywhere together. I said, my mom and dad came here together? So yeah, right down there by the garbage cans.
Wow.
He said, they came here and they were afraid that I was going to not go to college because of wrestling.
Wow.
And I remember, when he told me this story, I remember back then he said to me, I'll only train you if you go to college. Well, I already knew I was going to college. And, funny how all these years later, all these things, these stories all converge back to each other, But it was through him and finally then getting to see the NWA on TV, where I'd grown up watching WWF and then WWF, and then seeing the NWA product that instantly gravitated my attention and allegiance over to that.
Wow.
I still like some of the guys in WWF, but the NWA to me was the wrestling company.
Right.
It was where you could see the holds and the moves and the counters that resembled wrestling, not this flying and all the craziness. And it just became a huge mark for that. And I remember watching you and thinking, like, how's he get in there? And now you're just telling me the story. It was crazy.
I get tickled now, Shane, on like you see on the internet or something where a wrestler's made contact to a promoter and the promoter don't call him back. And then he'll do a big long post on, well, that's just disrespectful. And I can't believe he didn't call me back. And I just sit back and laugh, like, man, nobody owes you nothing.
Right, nobody knows you.
Nobody knows you. But you said, you hit the nail on the head a while ago. I wish, at that time, man, I wish I'd have just slowed down, a little bit. But it was,
soaked it in.
It soaked it all in. But it was so funny, Shane, because I agree with you that I thought NWA, these are athletes, these are the toughest men in the world. And I'll never forget this. When WWF first came out with those those rubber dolls, Flair had came to TV and he was hot. I mean, he was ticked, he was cussing, throwing his coat, briefcase, everything, and even Ola was trying. What the heck's the matter with you? What's wrong with you? And I'm, we're sitting here in this dressing room, all these great athletes, Magna, everybody's an athlete.
Yeah.
And finally Flair calmed down and Ola said, what's wrong with you? And Flair said, well, I just talked to Iron Sheik. And he said it loud enough where we could all hear it. And Ola said, Iron Sheik? Yeah, what's that got to do? And he said, well, Iron Sheik just told me he made $200,000 last year on his wrestling doll. Because he was like the ultimate heel, figure. And so Flair's mad because we didn't have nothing. No, I was like, what? You got all these great athletes, and Flair's mad. No, because he had a great match, and I don't blame him. He just said, I don't understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
Because I think at that time, even TBS had put out like a VHS tape of like best of matches or something.
Right.
So you thought, wait a minute, what the heck? You hear your whole career, you got to train, athlete, let's run this business, but wait a minute. They're making 10 times for a stupid doll?
Right.
I said, wait a minute. So you said, what a crazy business we're in. But
did it seem to you then, because it did to me at the time, with the NWA, as great as the product was and everything, it always seemed like the WWE, like I was compared to like the Roadrunner and the Coyote.
Yeah.
Like no matter how good we would get, they always beep beep and they would take off and go somewhere. Like the merchandising.
Right.
That to us today just seems ubiquitous, right? I mean, why wouldn't you do it?
Right.
But back then, that was never done.
It was never done.
So when Vince came out with those dolls the first time and then started putting the merchandise out, it was probably, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't it? It was like a year or two or three before NWA started doing anything.
When I knew we wasn't in Kansas no more, Shane, was when my first WWF taping. And here's what's funny about our business. And I go back to the booking thing. Nelson Roll and Gene Anderson had literally had a wrestling school in Nelson's barn. He had a ring and the horse stalls. And I'll never forget one night Nelson called me like 10 o'clock at night, said, you want to work out? And I said, man, I'd love to work out with you. But I said, tomorrow? He said, nah, now, kid. I said, okay, this is when Nelson's older. And so I get there and I knew it's just one light in a barn, the horses, it stunk. And so I had old sweats on. And so I'm in the ring and I'm waiting. And all of a sudden Nelson comes in, he's got his bag. The old Heidelberg, and like he's going to Madison Square Garden. I said, what? And there's no cameras or nothing. So he pulls up an old metal chair, like right in the middle of the hay bales. Starts putting his boots on and knee pads and the bands. And I'm like, he's fixing to kill me. And So we got in there for like 2 hours. Literally, and he beat the crap out of me. And I believe this. I think he was just showing off them freaking horses. I think he just stretched me in front of them freaking horses. But I never did that again. But so I had a chance to go to WWF. But Gene and Nelson Raw were booking it. They were sending 15 guys. And I'll never forget, I said, man, I'd love to go. And Gene says, well, you know the deal, kid. Of course I knew the deal. They're going to charge me a booking fee.
Right.
I didn't care.
Yeah.
Man, I'm going to WWF. At that time, Klondike Bill and them still had our Crockett rings in a flatbed trailer with an old pickup. So man, we get WWF first time, we get there to the building, I see transfer trucks. There's like 15 transfer trucks with their logos on the side. And all of a sudden, the ring crew has got jumpsuits on that match with the logo on the back and the same color tennis shoes.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, what the heck's going on here? That's when I realized it's just a little bit different.
Right.
And I had just recently told the story. It was so funny because Dusty, this is the one time, Barry had left, Tully and Arn had left, everybody left to go to WWF. And J.J. Dillon told me this. He said one day they needed somebody for like Raleigh. And Dusty yelled down the hallway and said, well, call George South. He's always available. And J.J. said, Dusty? Nope, he's gone too. We were all in WWF, man. But what impressed me, Shane, and I, everything, when we got there a little bit late, 15 of us, Tommy Angel, Ricky Nelson, all Nelson Wars guys, and we didn't know what door to go in. So but we knew we were running late. So we just happened to pick the door where Vince was. And I'll never forget this. First person I ever met that worked for WWF was the owner of it.
Wow.
So we come in and we're sweating from running, but what impressed me, Shane, he knew every one of our names. He didn't just say, "Oh, guys, go that way."
Right.
It was like that. I think that's why he's did what he's did. He knew George South, Tommy Angel, David Isley, go right down, down the hallway or whatever.
Right.
And that always stuck with me.
Yeah.
That he knew. That's why I tell guys now, you ain't going to WWE to do a dark match.
Right.
They know
Sure.
about you before you ever get
Absolutely.
there. So this is how great it was. Oh gosh, I wish I could go back. My kids hate even talking about it because there were times when they got so tired of their dad getting beat up 5 different times in 1 week. I mean, I'd be at Bill Watts on a Monday, Kamala would be splashing me, and then Tuesday, Rip Rogers would be figure 4 at me, and then I ain't lying, then I'd be up in like WWF by Friday, and then I went to Florida. Florida was in there, and I made a tremendous living. And it really taught me a lot, Shane, because each guy, I had to work a little bit different with each guy.
Sure.
I remember Bill Watts booked me and Rocky King against Kamala, and I didn't care. But Rocky said, "Man, come out here, man. Rocky want to go up there and do like a 40-minute Broadway." And I remember Bill Watts looked and said, "Kids, y'all don't get paid by the hour." So you know what I tell people? I hear these guys say, "God, I got screwed. I got, that nobody gives me no respect." And I'm thinking, wait a minute. I think, because in my first few years of my career, when I started making a little bit of money, I lost to the Mulkeys, Mulkey boys. They beat me right in the middle.
Right.
The end of the week, I lost to the Ding Dongs.
Oh,
the famous Ding Dongs.
Yes,
So that's like when people tell me I got an ego now. I say, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody needs to lose to the Mulkeys and the Ding Dongs.
In the same week.
Yeah, in the same week. Because there is no attitude after that. I mean, you don't have no ego after that. You're ready, because anything after that's good. And so that's all I done. I mean, I knew my place. It was so funny because even when Dusty called me and Gary Roll in to tell us about the Mulkeys, I remember because Gary, the greatest partner in the world, and Gary thought this may be our chance.
Yeah.
We've been paying our dues. Mm-hmm. This is our chance, and I didn't care. And so we go in, and a brief meeting. Dusty said, "Mulkeys are going to beat you." That was it. I think Gary's ready to buy a house, and Dusty said, "Mulkeys are going to beat you." And then I always tell Gary to this day, "I'm the one who got pinned. What are you worried about?" But even then, we had no T-shirts. They had no Mulkey. They had a little cardboard sign that said Mulkey on it. So there was so much missed out on that merchandising thing of it. But I'd go back and do for the guys. You talking about? I'd work Jesse Barr one night in Florida, and the young bloods was, and then the next day, I ain't lying, George Animal Steel would be biting my forehead in WWF, and I thought, how could anybody ever screw this up?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. Yeah. And I never had a contract. But I always, and this is something these young guys need to remember, I never left without them telling me, "We want you back."
Yeah.
That was like my incentive,
Sure.
And I joke with my students now. I said, when we go do a show, it ain't about money, it's about getting invited back. Because there's a lot of times they say, "Get the heck out of here and don't ever come back." What do you think you're doing?
Yeah.
So even all those TVs, it was funny because everybody said, "Well, did you ever work any like spot shows?" I said, "There was no time.
Yeah.
I was doing 7 TVs a week," and that's when that's when the territories, Shane, and you know this, buddy, everybody respected everybody.
Yes.
And the one thing I take up Vince for, that I take, everybody says Vince killed the business. I said, no, stupid. I said, all Vince done was offer all of my NWA promoters money, and everyone I took it.
Yes.
You ever thought about that?
Yes, right.
From Kansas City to, wait a minute.
Well, he was the first one that had the idea, right? I remember when he first started pushing out around '84. I remember hearing people talk like around the dressing rooms, like in the indie shows that I was working at the time, like, "Oh, he's gonna have the river with a bullet in his head." Everybody thought somebody's gonna do him in, and meanwhile he had the vision.
Yeah.
Right? He had grown up around the business, and he had the vision of what if somebody would take it to the corporate level and take it big. There's a million things I disagree with about the way he presents the product and everything. But as far as business goes, I've said consistently throughout my career, I can tell you all the reasons I think the guy's a jerk.
Yeah.
But I'll never call him stupid, and you can never call him a bad businessman.
Right.
The one question I have for you is that I've always wondered about this, and you might have just answered, I guess, in part. Why did you never Did you ever want to go on the road?
Well,
Because I mean, you clearly had the talent to do it, and you
Yeah.
had a place for the company. And you know, in your career, how many times have you seen the new young star come
Right.
in and go, right, in and out, in and out?
and this is a true story. I was making so much money sleeping in my own bed, and the first chance I got, Dusty come in and he said, well, Jim Crockett's going to buy Kansas City. Bob Guy was selling it, we're going to buy Kansas City.
Yeah.
And Dusty had a list again. I don't know what it was about that sheet of paper in that pocket, but he said, this is who's going to Kansas City.
Yeah.
And he read Me and Rocky King, and I just bought my first house. Little bitty old house, so proud of it. I'll never forget, Shane, I go into Dusty's office, and it had to be a mistake. I mean, dream. I mean, what do you mean I'm going to Kansas City? And I go in his office, I said, Dusty, I just bought a house. And he looked right at me and said, I hope it's got wheels. I said, what? I thought he was going to hug me, you know, or said, okay, we'll get somebody else. No, this is when you start. And so, little George, my oldest son, he was 1 year old, I'll never forget it. So we load up, throw stuff in an old car, and me and Rocky. And so we take off to Kansas City, 1,000 miles. We get there, they give us a starting date. We're wrestling in front of 10, 15 people. Now, I'm not a bright tool in the shed, but I'm thinking, wait a minute now. I was just, I just wrestled in front of 5,000 in Raleigh.
Yeah.
Flair beat me, and okay, no, but I'm okay. This is our push. So that's when Miami Vice, the TV show, was up. So Dusty had an idea we were going to be Kansas City Vice. So he told us to get these Don Johnson jackets, and so we literally had, Kansas City Vice. I mean, man, we were ready to go. We looked the part.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the first night, Memorial Hall display, because Dusty's there, Magnum, rock and roll, and we're all getting ready to get rich.
Right.
But see, and I learned quick, when they brought the A-team out there, we sold out. But see, the next day, the A-team left.
That's right.
And we're still here.
Yeah.
And then we go to like Wichita Canvas, there's 10 people in the audience. I said, wait a minute, when's the rest of the people coming? And so, and I'll never forget this. So Baby Doll actually called Jim Crockett back here to Charlotte and said, do we still run? And he said, well, the rent's paid, but the good thing I got out of that, Shane, is they didn't care how long you worked. I'd go out there with Denny Brown and we'd go an hour just doing moves because who cares? There's nobody watching it. But after about a year, that's why I'm telling you right now, the virus, the plague, zombie coming, I'll survive.
Yeah.
Because listen, I'm in Kansas City, and I was smart enough, thank the Lord, that I kept my little house.
Yeah.
Kept my wife, told them to stay. And so literally making $100 a week. And so I was trying to send half of that home.
Yeah.
And already when we get there, the Kansas City guys hated us, the few that they kept, because they were comfortable making $10 a night and just having fun. But so I said, no, it's going to be okay. So I'm sending everything back home. I learned how to make the best tomato soup you ever tasted for free. You give me about 5 packs of ketchup, I'm gonna tell you. And there was this old lady at Waffle House that loved me. I couldn't spend no money. It sounds goofy now when you think, there's a $1 hamburger, but I tried to keep my house. And what's so funny, Shane, the other guys that was on Dusty's top to come out there to Kansas City, they all bought houses. I didn't. We went and got, and I forget the sign from the interstate. It said $20 a week, not $20 a night, $20 a week. I said, Rocky, guess where we're staying?
Yep.
And we did. And I remember the boys used to laugh at us. But so 2 weeks out there in Kansas City, we're gonna have a big welcome to Kansas City, get together, all the boys. So we get there to one of the guys' new house, and there's no freaking furniture. I mean, he can't afford.
Yeah.
He can't afford nothing.
Yeah.
So we're standing around. I'm trying to eat my sandwich. Can't even sit down. I'm thinking, in my $20 a week motel, I got a freaking bed.
Yeah.
I got a TV, and I got a chair.
Yes.
So I'm realizing, I'm stupid. So I see how much money they had spent on their own. So anyway, I'm sending it back. A year goes by. Hadn't seen my son, nothing. And territory ain't no better.
Yeah.
Shane. And I've kept my house. I'm sending. I hate. If you showed me a cracker, an old saltine, I'd run. I ate so many crackers just trying to survive.
Sure.
And this was NWA.
Yeah.
They told me I had a meeting with Bob Geigel, NWA president. I thought, man, I'm signing the contract.
Right.
Literally, they give me an address. I get there. It's a rundown apartment. It really is. The windows are broke out of it. And I said, man, there was no GPSs. They said Rick Stewart was the ring announcer. He said, yeah, that's the address. Go on in. Bob Goggles waiting. So you got to kidding me. Doors are hanging on the hinges.
Really?
And so it's the NWA office.
Yes.
So I go in. It was an apartment, like 611, whatever. 6 is hanging off the door. You just got to be kidding me. So I open it, I go in, and it's a freaking apartment, but it's the NWA office. There's VHS tapes laying everywhere. Bob Geigel comes around, hey kid, glad to have you. He's hugging me. I think, wait a minute, where's the dadburn, office?
Right.
Where's the letterheads and the pens and stuff?
Secretaries.
So after about a year, I said, I said, because I gave it a chance, and then it was simple math for me. I thought, wait a minute, I can go back home and sleep in my own bed. Little George had been there, his first year of his life I missed. And oh, he reminds me of that to this day. But and so I said no. So we had a big show coming up in St. Louis. Dusty was coming out, and it was going to sell out. And I pulled Dusty to the side, and I said, I'm going home. I said, I can go back home and honestly do jobs on television and make 10 times as much and still have my family.
Sure.
And it was so funny because he said, well, would you finish up here? I said, of course I'll finish up. And so I turned that, Rufus R. Jones was a big help to me too. He fed us many times. And that's just letting us stay there. It was funny because Ricky and Robert would come out there, and all I would do was complain about how bad it was, but Ricky and Robert would get out there and it'd sell out. And I remember Ricky said, what's the problem? I said, y'all packing up and going home, So I just told Dusty, I said, I'm going back home. And so Ron West was out there running things, and bless his heart to this day, he saw where Bulldog Bob Brown was going to let me sleep on his floor for that week, so I wouldn't have to get a motel.
Right.
And I was ready. I had the cars packed. I said, screw Kansas City. I'll never watch Wizard of Oz again. You know what I'm saying? I hate the Chiefs. I hate. So Ron West came out and says, let me get this right. He said, you're supposed to stay another week? And I said, yeah. I said, I told Dusty I'd finish up. He said, I'll go home. And I said, are you sure? He said, listen, you got my blessing. Go home. And literally, I left right then. And what's so funny about it, I was a nervous wreck. I was going, Dusty's going to get mad or whatever. Well, 2 months later, they shut the whole thing down. Now, here's how bad our business is. But in this process, Crockett buys Florida. Shane, screw that.
Yes.
So he says, the same crew, the Mulkeys, Italian Stallion, all of our friends, y'all ain't coming home. You're going to, and they didn't. Bless their heart, Kendall, all of them. Mod Squad, they buy, it's like something out of a movie. They hung a riot at Charlotte and went to Florida. I said, I'm not going. I don't care if I got to stay here. So what was so funny about it, Shane, long story short, I remember Stan called me from Florida, and Florida was so bad that, and I didn't, the territory was so bad, the Bay Faces had to share their gimmick money with the Hills. Because the Hills couldn't sell nothing. So and so nobody's making no money. I remember Stan called me from Florida, and I'd never run a show in my life. And he said, how much did you make last week? I said, I made $800 for three TVs. And slept in my own bed. He said, screw that. And he says, you think we can buy a ring? And I said, it can't, I said, it can't be, never run a show in my life. I said, it can't be as bad as Kansas City. And I said, I can mess it up that bad. I mean, worst case. And so we bought a ring. Rest is history. Ted Allen sold us a ring and started running a little bit of shows. You talking about holding a grudge. First show I ran, Shane, we didn't draw nothing. I didn't know what I was doing. I just had a ring. Buddy. And I never forget this. I took $5 out of my pocket to pay a couple of the guys just to get them home. And next day they're all mad. And you know, to this day, probably 41 years later, I've never used them guys again. They're all alive. I see them. I say, hey, but I'll never forget that. I mean, are you kidding me? You took my last $5 and you said I screwed you. I had to walk home. And so I said, no, you'll never. I don't care if I buy WWE, I ain't hiring them. I mean,
what's incredible about you to me, George, is, and I think most people, it could be Shane Douglas, it could be George South, it's the same story, little change here and there, but the same story. We came into the business with such wide-eyed wonderment, like, wow, we're in professional wrestling. And I tell people all the time, like, I remember Mick Foley and I and Cody Michaels and Brian Hildebrand sitting around Dominic's school and thinking like, okay, we're okay to do a local show, but we're nowhere near as good as those guys on TV. And, you know, for all these years later, looking back and seeing what you've achieved, but you still have the wonderment of the business.
Right.
And that's, you know, the thing that I think most people would be surprised about with me is they hear me talk about the negative stuff a lot. The reason I talk about the negative stuff is there's a small part of the market in me that wants to see it get better. When I see King Kong Bundy, you know, living in a 3-room house at the apartment at the end of his life and struggling to make ends meet. You know, we can get into he spent too much here, they should have did this, they should have did that. But I would contend to my dying breath, somebody who has spent 350 days per year away from their family on the road, making a lot of money for that person, were they not entitled to something at their end, some sense of comfort at the end of their life? And so that's why I talk about the negative, but I still have that, and that's been the reason for this long book that I've been talking about, and I am in the process of writing it. But what keeps waylaying me is in the book, the stories tend to gravitate towards the negative.
Right.
And I know in the back of my head why I'm saying those things. But what I want the book, I had just spoken to an author last week that wants to work with me on it, is I want the book to extend what they're hearing you say right now.
Right.
That's still that wow factor of wrestling.
Exactly.
The fact that we were blessed to have been able to be a part of this industry, to earn our living here in this way. And that's what I want the book to extend. And it tickles me to no end to see, you know, you're a little bit grayer now.
Yeah.
We all are, right? A few more wrinkles than we used to have. But you're still the same kid that I met in 10th and Techwood all those years ago.
Thank you.
You know, and it's just, you know, what a ride. I mean, it's.
Well, you know, I never, and to this day, Paul Jones was my favorite wrestler as a kid.
Yeah.
And I used to go get coffee for him. You know, for years he'd say, "Go get me some coffee," and I'd go, and I'd come back, he'd be gone. And you know, years later, I said, "Dang, Paul, I'd go get you a coffee," and he said, "Well, you're driving me nuts. You know, that'd send you off. You're driving me nuts." So even up to the moment he died, I would go get him and take him to lunch. And I never wanted to lose this. We'd be sitting there talking, and he'd say, and he knew how I felt about him and the Andersons and Wahoo, and it was so real to me. And he'd say, you know, and I'd be like 57 years old, and he'd say, you know, me and Ole's pretty good friends. And I'd say, Paul, please shut up, you know. And he'd say, no, really, I just called him and checked on him. I said, no, you didn't. I mean, seriously, because it was like I was changing to a different person. I said, I don't want to hear that. I mean, literally, I said, no, you hate Ole, and he hates you. Man, we'd beat each other to death in Charlotte and then go have a beer. And he knew. Literally, I couldn't breathe. I'd say, shut up. And that's what I tell these fans now. And I can solve wrestling in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
It's the fans that have to say, I don't want to know. In other words, if I loved David Copperfield and you said, George, I'm going to pick you up and we'll go see your favorite magician, and I'm sitting here excited, man, I've had the ticket in my hand for a week, and on the way there you say, hey, George, let me tell you how he gets that rabbit. I said, show me. Let me tell you how he gets that rabbit out of his hat.
Yeah.
Let me tell you how he takes something fly. Let me tell you how he eats that sword. And finally I'm going to say, Shane, no.
Killing it.
You know, so I blame everything on the fans for one reason. They're the dumb ones to want to know how we do everything and then go sit and watch us do everything. I mean, it's like I came home off the road one day. My kids, my twin girls, 6 years old, they're in the yard, their friends are telling them there's no Santa. So I'm just listening for a minute. I said, well, what? You're freaking 6-year-old, you should be eating rocks or something. You're trying to expose the business, you know, Santa Claus business. You freaking kidding me? And so I just listened. And the kid, it's so sad. And I ran the kids off. I said, don't ever come back in this yard again, because I know my kids are going to find out enough. Soon enough. And so to me, pro wrestling, I'm still a fan. I just want to eat popcorn. I want to just cheer and I want to boo.
Yeah.
I swear, Ole told me one time, I said, Ole, I'm trying to figure this early on. I said, I'm trying to figure this out. He said, well, go watch an old Western. I said, huh? He said, I'm talking about wrestling, not a Western. He said, no, go to an old black and white Western and I'll explain wrestling. That's what I did. So I watch him. I said, wait a minute, I know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
The bad guy rides into town, he gets heat on the saloon owner, burns the town down. Well, guess what?
Here comes the baby.
Here comes the baby face.
Yeah.
And I said,
John Wayne.
John Wayne come right over that sunset, and won, and I really tell everybody that's all that wrestling match is supposed to be.
That's right.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I think I get so aggravated because it fairly is. I got into pro wrestling, I didn't want to have to think. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, I don't want to put no work into this.
Bill Watts used to say, and every time I tell stories like this, you always hear the Bill Watts used to say, because I learned all that. I hated it at the time because he was yelling and screaming.
Yeah.
Big bully, and the first night there, pushed me against the wall, face right here, poking me in the chest. I didn't like his methods, but I certainly learned from him. Same thing with Dusty, right? The stuff you picked up just watching and observing. But he used to say, black hat, white hat, that's wrestling.
Wow.
And really, he used to start by saying, we're not curing cancer, we ain't splitting the atom. Black hat, and he holds it up, black hat, white hat, that's wrestling. Same thing as the Western, right? It really is that simple. And I'm curious to ask about the more recent product. And I'll preface by saying this because I could already hear the trolls out there going, this has nothing to do with how we did it in our day and how it is today, just comparing the two sides. Did you ever go to a ring thinking, I'm going to go out and get the fans laughing?
No.
Or I'm going to go out and expose the business to them, or let them know that I'm on it with them.
Right.
You went out there and you portrayed a character, whether you were a baby face or a heel that night. Went out there and portrayed that black hat or white hat.
Yes.
Do you get the sense today that the kids go to the ring thinking, well, the fans already know it's all fake, so it doesn't really matter what we do?
Yeah. I totally agree with that, Shane. The reason it's done and it's over, that burn it, is I, as a kid, felt I had to buy a ticket. I had to go because Paul Jones needed me.
Sure.
I mean, seriously.
Can't win without you.
Golly, I may be up in the nosebleed seats, but them Dad Burn Anderson brothers, Paul needs me.
Yeah.
So I was there every week. It's so simple. Now, it's partly the wrestler's fault too, because nobody needs nobody.
Yeah.
I mean, you got bay faces that they're literally afraid to sell or go to a knee because they think it's going to make them look weak. I told the guy the other week, you idiot, you're supposed to look weak.
Right.
Well, what do you mean? I never heard of that. I mean, oh my gosh. So I really think, here's a question that nobody can answer for me. And this will explain everything. Where is that misgeneration, Shane Douglas, of wrestling fans? And what I mean by that, where's the old people? Where's those people that we talked about sitting, held little grandbabies on their lap and came wrestling every Monday night and cheered and booed and set their clock by? There's no old people.
Right.
There is a whole lost generation that said, screw it.
Yeah.
And we didn't run them off.
No.
Somebody did. So you got the young kids and you got teenage like that, but there's no, what's any of the shows that's still on when the fans could come. You don't see no old people sitting there.
No, that's
nobody.
True. Well, the numbers, and I only know this because of the promotion that I've been worked on a couple of years back. When WWF, WCW, and ECW were all three in business, there was an average weekly viewership in America. Forget Canada, Mexico, Europe, Far East, forget Australia, just in the United States, an average of 48 to 52 million people watching wrestling every single week.
Wow.
In one form or another. Now, some of those fans may have moved from here to here, so it might not have been 48 to 52 original viewers.
Right.
But there were 48 to 52 million views of wrestling back at that time. WWF in the last few weeks has been doing 1.5 million, 1.6 million. AEW and NXT do about a 1.3 million between the two, but it slides back and forth this way. Before, again, the trolls started to say, but people are watching online now. Here's where you can tell the difference. When you used to go to the Charlotte airport to fly to WWF, people yelling stuff at you?
Oh, yeah.
Recognize it from TV, right?
Yeah.
Every time I used to walk to the Pittsburgh airport, even up to the time I was doing coaching and agenting in TNA, people would yell out, "Hey, tell AJ Styles good luck," or whatever. I haven't heard, other than a Bruno question. I go to the Pittsburgh airport, hey, horrible about Bruno, I miss Bruno, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But there's nothing about, hey, did you catch Monday night, or did you catch Saturday night, or last week at the Civic Arena? There's none of that.
Right.
And like you said, that's the generation.
And the matches, it's so funny. fans will come up and they'll talk about me against Ric Flair 30 years ago. And I use that at my wrestling school. I say, guys, listen, I'm very appreciative of that. Don't get me wrong, but they're not telling me what they just watched on television. There's something wrong here.
Yes.
You know, what is it? One of the top, I told my students this other day, it don't pay to come to my wrestling school. I'm telling you, Christian, our friend, Christian just came back. No, Edge. Edge came back. The whole wrestling world's talking about Edge coming back. Even wrestlers are posting about it.
Right.
And so I just basically said, y'all stupid. He just took y'all's job. I mean, seriously. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad he's back too.
Right.
But that's somebody's spot.
Right.
So I'm telling my students that. Oh, wait a minute. Well, I said, no, you can love him, but if you don't want it as bad as he did, we got a problem here.
Yes.
So I'm glad he's back too, but that's somebody's spot.
Correct.
It sure is. So I get tickled sometimes that we don't really, people in the business ain't got a clue, and I'm thinking, and so right now one of the top rated wrestling shows is about dead wrestlers. That's a true story.
Yeah.
So I tell everybody, y'all need to take a step back, take a look at this thing.
Right.
One of the hottest rated shows is about dead wrestlers. We got a problem here.
Right.
If this thing's going to continue.
Well, to me, you're absolutely right. With the advent of social media and stuff, right? So you and I couldn't get on a computer screen or a telephone or a device and talk to 10,000, 100,000, a million fans at a push of a button. We had a little slot on a weekly television show, and you just said it. Fans are still mentioning a match from 30 years ago. We hear those things all the time from the fans, which we so appreciate, right? That the fans even paid attention to it.
Right.
It's not those kid like me, but there's a problem.
Yeah.
Whenever I was world champion, I didn't ever hope that a fan would come to me and say, "Hey, nice to meet you, Shane. Bruno Sammartino's a great world champion."
Yeah.
I wanted them to forget as best I could about Bruno, because you're never going to live up to that anyway.
That's exactly right.
Leave a memory tonight.
Yeah. I think the fans have, and some of the boys, I think they've overthinked it. They just put too much thought in it. I think, mine and yours too, a lot of times our check was not already in the mailbox if we didn't go to work.
Correct.
And a lot of young wrestlers don't understand this, is if we didn't go out there and bust our butt, Shane, they didn't come back. And we had to have them come back. Because Crockett especially would run every Monday night in this town, and so a lot of the fans traveled. So if we worked 7 days a week each other, we changed it every night because the fans, a lot of the same fans were there.
Right.
And here's the thing, I tell everybody this, I would not have fell in love if this is the wrestling that was like it was. If I was a kid and this is, nobody would have fell in love with this the way we did.
Right.
This is how bad I had it. Paul Jones was it to me.
Sure.
And I was a kid, 10 years old, Shane, and this, they did a contest. It was a shoot from Atlantic Wrestling. Mm-hmm. Whoever gets the most postcards wins a gold watch. Boom. Man, I went out, I cut grass, I picked up pop bottles. I was going to win this thing. Brother, every penny I could. Man, I was sending 200 postcards in the WRL studio, man. Paul's going to win it. 1974. And it was a shoot. That's what I loved about it. Now they'd rig it. They'd let whoever their top bayface win it. But anyway, and it was going, I don't care if Don Cornell, not bless Don Cornell, but anybody, whoever got the most postcards, Paul Jones won that watch. They presented it to him on television. 1974, for the fans voted him, boom, this gold watch. 10 years, 20, 30, 40, I get in the business. Mm-hmm. I done forgot about this watch. Paul owned a garage. He'd done retired. He was managing a little bit for Crockett. He owned a garage in Charlotte. So I go to take him for lunch. He's on the phone. I'm sitting in front of his desk, and he's about buying parts or something. So I'm sitting there saying, I thought, you gotta eat lunch, would you? So, and he's still Paul Jones to me, a little older and stuff, and I'm a kid, and yes sir, no sir, everything. And he pulls the old wooden desk drawer out. I remember like it was yesterday, and it's that watch.
Wow.
He picks it up, and literally, my middle son Garrett was on my lap. Literally, he was like a year old, And I used to take him over because Paul hated kids. He called them brats, you know. But I had my kid here, and I ain't seen this watch in 30 years.
Yeah.
He pitched it out, and he pitched it. And I knew then. I swear I knew. I knew. And I forgot all about my kid. I mean, that kid was like that big guy I talked about when I was working with you, and he hit his head. And luckily, I don't know how I did it, but I caught that watch, and then I caught that diaper in both hands, pulled my kid back up, and I got it. And I literally, going back to being a kid, and I was much older than Shane. I was even in the business.
Yeah.
So he's still this old timer. You know, he got that old dry sense of humor. So I'm shaking, and I'm thinking, this is like the greatest man I ever met in my life. You know, I want to have your baby. You know, I want to marry you. I mean, you just gave me the Holy Grail. So I'm leaving, and all I want to do is get out of there.
Yeah.
I said, it's like I stole it. So we get in the car, and I throwed my kid in there and just strapped the seatbelt over him, and I got that watch, and I look out my mirror, and here goes Paul. I was like, oh my God. And I got to stop. I mean, it's my hero.
Yeah.
He takes him, like, you know, it takes him forever to get over there. Roll that blank window down. So I roll that window down, got that watch. He said, where do you think you're going? I said, what do you mean? He said, that's my watch. And literally, and he's working me. But I'm showing you how much emotion in that freaking parking lot that he's doing. And I literally start crying.
Yeah.
I mean, my poor little kid said, Dad, you idiot, you know? But literally, Paul says, you can't have that. I've had that my whole life. And oh my God. And I'm literally, Shane, I'm showing you how them old timers can work.
Absolutely.
And I'm in the freaking business. So I go give him the watch. And all of a sudden his frown turns to a smile.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, you, first cuss word I ever said, you son of a... He said, take that watch and get on out of here. And I literally had to pull over out of his parking lot to get my emotions back.
Sure, sure.
So if he'd done that at freaking 70 years old, to me,
yeah.
Can you imagine what he did in that ring to those fans? So anyway, I've got that watch at home that he had given me. And what a full circle. I mean, my gosh, to you know.
Could you have ever imagined that kid sending those postcards in?
Oh.
That watch you're seeing on TV one day is going to be in your hand.
Lord, listen, I was like, I'd go to the matches, and Johnny Weaver, it's when he was working. As a kid, I remember it, he said, and I knew Paul Jones was advertised. So I'd be there at like 8 a.m. in the morning, just waiting. And Johnny Weaver would say, kid, you got it wrong. That's Rufus R. Jones. And I'd start crying. They played, that's why I'm a nervous wreck now. And I'd be out in that parking lot of the Park Center with my little ticket, with my little scrapbook, you know, with Paul's pictures all, drew all over me. And he said, oh, that's Rufus R. Jones, you stupid kid.
Yeah.
And I'd start crying. I mean, they played with my emotions. And I said, oh, I had no ride because I got dropped off. 10 years old, I was staying downtown Charlotte. My hero ain't gonna be here. And then he'd let me cry. You know, just that old timey read. And he'd let me cry for about an hour, cussing. Just, how am I gonna get home? He read it wrong. Paul. And then he'd come out and say, you stupid, Paul's gonna be here. And oh, okay. That's all I cared about.
Christmas morning.
I mean, I'm telling you right now, I even in school, it was so bad. I would pass a test. This is how stupid it is. I've never told nobody this. I would pass a test, and I would sign it Paul Jones. Literally, Chris, I'd sign it Paul Jones. And the teacher, I remember like yesterday, 3rd grade, 4th grade, I could sign Paul's name better than him. And they'd come and say, George, please, okay, we can't turn this in if Paul Jones. And it was so bad. Bill Eadie, like my superstar.
Yes. He
cuts Paul Jones's hair on television. I watched it as a kid. As soon as it's over, I go get scissors, Shane. I mean, that's how bad. Yeah. I mean, I'm walking around, I loved it. I'm walking around having my head, cut out because Paul just got his hair cut.
Sure.
God. And I wish, and I say that all because they don't know that nobody. I tell people, I feel sad for fans now because they'll never feel what I felt.
No.
You know, and just that, and I'll sum this kind of up. I know we got people that want to meet us, but Wahoo McDaniels, he had got sick, Shane, and this is why I know I'm where I need to be in pro wrestling. And I'd always loved Wahoo, and he to me was just tough. I remember one night I was helping Klondike Bill, him and Flair was in the main event in Shelby, the old building now, where it's sweaty. Now they've redid it, got air conditioning. What the heck? But Flair Wahoo's in the main event. I'm helping Klondike Bill take the ring down. So everybody's leaving, and so I'm helping Klondike Bill. And there's a light over there at the bathroom, and everybody's leaving. So what the heck? Let me go see real quick. So go over, and Wahoo is in a mirror sewing his own forehead up.
Wow.
He's got needle and thread sewing his own head up. And
Wow.
I just watched. I thought, that's like the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He looked over and said, "Beats paying a doctor." And I thought, man, that's like the toughest man in the world. So anyway, he had got sick, and it was funny because they tried to keep, Crockett wanted to, Dusty was going to give him a job. He was going to be an agent. And now I forget this, Greenville, South Carolina, that Wahoo done retired. He's going to be an agent. So we're in a meeting, or in a dressing room. Dusty calls a meeting. Well, there's this a Greenville Memorial Auditorium security guard there, and he won't leave. I mean, he literally won't leave the meeting. Dusty said, "Sir, we're getting ready to have a private meeting. Could you step out?" The guy said, "No, I'm not going to leave." I swear to you, Wahoo goes over and throws the guy, gun and all. He throws the guy out of the door, slams the door, and Dusty said, "Wahoo, I don't know if this agent thing's going to work," you know. So Wahoo had got sick, and he was still tough, and he would do some autograph signing and stuff like that. So long story short, for about 2 weeks, nobody knew where Wahoo was at. Well, Wally Dusick, who had built all of Crockett's rings, Frank Dusick's dad, he was like 90 years old at the time, and he had passed away, but his wife, Joyce, sweetest lady I've ever met in my life, she called me late at night. They were good friends with Wahoo. She called me late at night. She said, "Would you go with me somewhere?" And I said, "Joyce, is everything okay? It's like 4 a.m. in the morning." She says, "Well, I'm going to go see Wahoo." And I said, "What?" She said, "Well, we think he's at Charlotte Memorial Hospital, Shane." And I said, "Oh my gosh." So I go get her, 4 a.m. in the morning. See, a lot of people, I got heat with people because I share this, and they said I lied. I ain't got no reason why. So listen to this, Shane. So we go, Charlotte Memorial Hospital, 4 a.m. I'm walking down the hallway, and I don't even know what we're getting ready to find.
Yeah.
We just heard that's where Wahoo was, because he had no family here. So we go in a room, there's no name on the door, nothing, and it's Wahoo. It's Wahoo McDaniel, my hero. They got him handcuffed to the bed because he's trying to leave. He said, "Screw it." So they got him there. And Shane, this sums up our business. Before I could open my mouth, he raised up. He said, "Where's everybody at?" I said, "Well, Chief, it's me, it's Joyce. She wanted to see." He said, "I don't mean y'all." He said, "I mean all these promoters that I made money for."
Yeah.
He said, "Where they at? Nobody's called me." And a lot of it, I don't think nobody could find him, but he was very mad. He was very mad. And so he even said, "A lot of the boys, I made a lot of people money, and ain't nobody here." And so I was able to pray with Wahoo. I hugged him. I told him I loved him. And of course I left, and then he passed away shortly after that. I've shared that, and I've got some of the boys have got mad at me. But I'm telling you reality here, Jack, is the reality of this. Terry Funk even says it. Nobody went to Wahoo's funeral. Terry Funk was the only one at Wahoo's funeral. I mean, so I ain't making this up. But I ended on a good note that I did get to spend some moments with Wahoo. But our business is cold. I'm telling you. So if these fans or these young wrestlers think we all want to hug each other and bake a cake and invite you over for supper, bull crap. I mean, the coldness of this business for whatever reason. And I've had people say, "You made it sound like Wahoo died alone." I said, "Well, basically he about did." I mean, seriously. So I've learned from that, and I didn't share that to paint another dark side of the ring episode. But that's why I tried to cherish my friendship with you. I cherish.
Hold. He's one of the only person in the business, other than the big ugly guy standing behind the camera, that has texted me during this pandemic. And that means the world to me. It does.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Well, no, I appreciate that, and that means more to me. That I joke with people all the time. I can go in Walmart and not have to duck. I owe nobody no money. There's a lot of guys in the business I can't stand. I mean, just because they've had they've been stupid, And guys may have heat with me. I don't know, but I have peace and the friendships. This is all I know. You're all I know. Pro wrestling is all I know. I love it because my kids are older now, and it's funny because my daughter, she still come up and show me her finger. And I said, "What the heck you doing that, Gil?" She says, "Oh, when I was 10 years old. You made me hold a ring post. You smashed my finger. That was 20 years ago. Are you kidding me? So what an amazing ride. I mean, Shane, it really is. And we're not done. I mean, but I'm telling you, I shared that story with Wahoo, is I have so many great memories. You know, I had a friend that just talked to Terry Funk, and he said that Terry Funk said, well, how's George South doing? And I'm not saying that to brag, but for me, to a little old kid, man, that fell in love with this sport, to still be on those guys' minds. And I'm going to brag on this. Then I'm shutting up. Chris Jericho just did a cruise out on the ocean, 100 miles away, out on the ocean. Just did it right before this plague hit. My buddy goes to it. Best friend I've had since high school. He loves the business. So he texted me and he said, okay, they had Ric Flair on there as a guest, as a podcast, right there on the boat. It's sold out, and there's people everywhere. So as they're bringing Flair out, Jericho says, Rick, my claim to fame before we get started is I'm the only man that's ever been beat by your figure four. And he's joking, meaning that most people grab the ropes or they reverse it.
Right.
But he's saying that I'm the only man that's ever been beat. Rick said, no. You're the second man. And Jericho says, what do you mean? Rick says, George South is the first. So my buddy couldn't wait to get to land, to text me and say, we're on a freaking boat in the middle of the ocean. And Rick remembered beating you. And my buddy, he didn't know how to take it. He said, now, that is good, right? I said, you freaking kidding me? 50 years later for Flair to remember that. So if my claim to fame, we talked about it earlier, people come up and say, I even had last week I did a little podcast and the guy said, I got one last question. He said, are you mad? I said, huh? I said, man, we did a great interview. He said, no, really. He said, are you like remorse? I mean, you just got an urge to just hate everybody. I said, what the heck? I told him, he said, well, you never had a WrestleMania payoff. You never really had any big belts. And I'm just listening to this guy. And I said, stop. I said, I want you to still record this.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, buddy. I said, I've raised 5 kids. I bought a couple houses. I'm healthy. I've met some of the greatest people, athletes in the world. And I said, you're nuts. Yeah. I mean, but they base it on the money.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? They base it on stuff. And you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
I mean, but this is George South, and then we're going to end this thing so we meet people. I talked with Tommy Dreamer, our friend. I did his podcast. Before we got on the air, he said, George, I want to say something. He said, and we'll say it again later, he said, first time I ever met you, he said, you prayed before the matches. And that kind of caught me off guard. I was going, some wrestling question. He said, no, I just want you to know that was different. He said, that stuck with me all these years. So that meant more to me than any WrestleMania payoff.
Sure.
That in his life and the busyness of all that he remembered that we just prayed. And so little things like that, you can't. God, I remember I finished my book, Shane, and I promise, shut this off. I finished my book. We got ready to mash print. It's done. Mark James, great guy. He wrote Dutch Mantels and Bill Dudley. We're fixing to put this thing all over the world. He said, I want to ask you. He said, I love you. He said, but there's not one thing in your book dark. He said, there's nothing sad in it. He said, now you know that sells, right? And I understand, I love him, but he's trying to, okay, you want to sell books, right?
Right.
I said, no, Mark, I don't want nothing. Now, I got sad in my own life. I've seen a lot of hurt in this business.
Yeah.
I said, well, I don't want it in my book. I don't. I won't. And I'm so glad I made that decision many years later, because the greatest compliment I get, Shane, is when someone reads my book and they said, man, I felt like I was just sitting around on the couch talking to you. And so that, I think, as a wrestler, is to me, one of the greatest compliments in the world, Shane. It's just to be able to, I wanted to take people out of that seat and put them in the ring with us.
Right.
Right. That's the secret, buddy. So, but I would, you couldn't pay me enough for the true friendships. I just talked to Magnum TA a couple weeks ago, and that's what he was telling me. He said, man, a lot of people think that the injury was hard. He said, yeah, it was. He said, but my brotherhood, he said, that was almost as bad. It's just that brotherhood, because you hear the old saying, we were together more than our families.
Correct.
And I'm telling you, my kids thought rock and roll. Seriously, you asked little George in the 3rd grade who was president of the United States, he'd say Ricky Morton. I said, no, son. He said, what do you mean? You mean Dick Slater didn't discover America? And man, I said, no, wait, son, we got to get this right, man. But he, it was just so much of a part of him. And I would not, because you go back and trade anything, I'd have slowed down and enjoyed.
Yeah.
My biggest regret is I was around Andre the Giant so much, and I never got a picture with him. I mean, I was around him, we were talking, I talked to him, I was always in awe of him, but he was busy, playing cards, whatever, and we were busy doing TVs and stuff, and I never got that picture. And so now, I laugh at it because I get pictures now. We're going to do something here in a minute, but I hear fans say, man, I don't do that stuff. Or wrestlers.
Yeah.
That's kind of being a mark. I'm thinking, shut up, This is my favorite story. Right before this plague hit. Everything's before this plague hit.
Yeah.
So I go in this dressing room, and I love helping young kids. You do too, Shane.
Yes.
If I see them doing something stupid. So I look over there, and there's this kid, got beautiful long hair, a guy, young kid, it's kind of skinny, and he pulls out a roll of duct tape. True story. He puts it on his wrist. And I could tell he's got like that Jeff Hardy look. And I thought, brother, what? I mean, it's like 2 rolls of on his skin.
Yeah.
Oh, so I go over to him. I said, brother, this is none of my business, okay? I said, but that's going to hurt when you take it off. I said, why don't you just cut a sock up? Like Jeff Hardy.
Yeah.
He said, oh, God. And it was like, I insulted him. He was looking around. He said, man, people think I'm a mark, if I do that. And I think, you stupid. We're all marked. You're putting 10 pounds of duct tape on your freaking arm, but that ain't stupid.
Yeah.
So, but he missed it, is what I'm saying. It'd be okay to cut your freaking sock up. We all know you love Jim. I mean, it's like he was afraid to. I've never been afraid to say that I was in love with Paul Jones and Wahoo.
Sure.
And just that mystique. And, my match with CW, and we have told you this some other times, that we did that I Quit match. And you can't teach your facial expressions, Shane. I had my best friend, listen, but I'm going to tell you, I had my, we took some pictures in the back of me and CW, and you stepping in between us.
Right.
I had friends that been around this business their whole life. They text me when they saw them pictures. They said, my gosh, did y'all really hate each other that much? I mean, they saw that picture in the dressing room.
Right.
They don't know we were just, it was just, we still had them.
That's what we were taught.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I said, there's still a lot of heat there. So I got my friend, they can't wait to book us again.
Yeah.
I said, and Shane Douglas, I said, because of him, I lost. So I got these grown men that can't wait to see us confront each other because they think,
sure,
you screwed me over, That's good, that's good. So, but I love you, Shane. I mean that, buddy, and just I appreciate you, and I could be here. Oh Lord, I think you said hey, and I talked for 3 hours.
No, that's what it's all about.
But thank you.
Always good to see
I
you,
love
friend.
you, my
Very
friend.
good.
Thank you so much.